I want to ask you something before we get into it. When you think about switching to an electric car, what's the first thing that holds you back? I'm guessing it's not the environment. It's not the tech. It's this. Am I actually going to save money? Or am I going to spend more and just feel good about it? That question is exactly what this video is about, and I'm going to give you a real answer. Not a sales pitch, not a hit piece, just the actual math. Alright, let's start with the part that stops most people before they even look at a single spec sheet. The price tag. The average new electric car in America right now runs around $50,000 to $55,000. A comparable gas car, about $45,000 to $48,000. That's a real gap. Anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 more out of pocket on day one. Now, here's something you need to know that a lot of YouTube videos are still getting wrong in 2026. The $7,500 federal EV tax credit? Gone. It ended on September 30th, 2025. If you bought your EV before that date with a signed purchase contract, you might still be able to claim it. But if you're walking into a dealership today, that credit is not on the table anymore. And I know that stings, because a lot of the EVs or cheaper math from the last few years was built on that credit. So what's left? A few things. First, some states still have their own EV incentives. California, Colorado, New York, and several others still offer rebates ranging from $1,000 to $5,000. Check your state's DMV website before you assume there's nothing. Second, automakers are starting to fill the gap with their own discounts and financing deals, especially on slower selling models. If you're flexible on brand, there's real money to be found. Third, and this one actually is still alive, there's a federal tax credit covering up to 30% of your home EV charger installation cost, and that runs through June 30th, 2026. So if you're buying an EV right now, install that charger before July, and you can still knock a few $100s off the setup cost. But let's be honest, without the federal credit, the upfront cost comparison now clearly favors gas cars. The gap is real. The question is whether the ongoing savings are big enough to close it, and that's exactly what the rest of this video is going to answer. Alright, now we get to the part most people actually care about, the ongoing costs, gas. The average American drives about 15,000 miles a year. At 30 miles per gallon and $3.50 a gallon. That's $1,750 a year in fuel. Now, let's charge an EV for those same 15,000 miles. Most EVs get about 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour. At the US average electricity rate of around 16 cents per kilowatt hour, you're spending roughly $600 to $800 a year to charge at home. That's a savings of $950 to $1,150 every single year, just on fuel. But, and this is the part that vlogger I watched at a supercharger didn't fully explain, that math only works if you're charging at home. Because public fast chargers are a completely different story. DC fast chargers at places like Electrify America or ChargePoint often cost 40 to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Some peak hour pricing goes even higher. If you're doing most of your charging at public stations, you could end up paying more than a gas car owner, not less. Here's the one that surprises people most, and I think it's actually the most important factor in the whole equation. Maintenance. A gas car has over 2,000 moving parts in its drivetrain. An electric motor has about 20. That is not a typo. 20. No oil changes. No spark plugs, no timing belt, no transmission fluid, no exhaust system to rot out. Even the brakes last longer on an EV because of regenerative braking. The motor slows the car down instead of the brake pads. AAA puts the average annual maintenance cost of a gas car at around $1,200. For an EV, around $400 to $500. That's $700 to $800 a year, every year, that you're not spending at a mechanic. Over 10 years, That's $7,000 to $8,000 back in your pocket, just from not having a complicated engine. A mechanic buddy of mine actually told me, half joking, that EVs are bad for his business, and I thought that was the most honest endorsement of electric cars I'd ever heard. Okay, this is the one where CNBC made a really good point, but only told half the story. Depreciation. How fast does your car lose value? CNBC ran a segment showing that EVs have dropped significantly in resale value, and that's true. In 2022 and 2023, used EV prices fell fast. Some models lost 30 to 40% of their value in 2 years. But here's what they left out. First, gas cars also depreciate about 40% in the first 5 years. This isn't just an EV problem. That's a new car problem. Second, Tesla Model 3s and Model Ys still hold value better than most comparable gas cars. The depreciation problem is mostly concentrated in older, less popular EV models, or cars that got undercut by newer versions. Third, if you're buying used, the depreciation already happened. A 2-year-old EV that lost 30% of its value is now a genuinely good deal, with lower running costs baked in. So yes, depreciation is real, but it's not the EV-specific catastrophe that some media coverage made it sound like. It's more complicated than that. And more complicated is something YouTube headlines are terrible at conveying. Alright, I promised you the full picture. So here are the costs that usually don't make it into the EVs Save You Money articles. Home charger installation. If you want level 2 charging at home, which you really do, it charges 5 times faster than a regular outlet. You're looking at $500 to $1,500 for the equipment and electrician. One-time cost, but it's real. Higher insurance. EVs generally cost 10 to 15% more to insure than comparable gas cars. Partly because the repair costs are higher, partly because the parts are still more specialized. That adds up to maybe $150 to $300 a year, depending on your insurer. Battery replacement risk. This is the big scary one people bring up. EV batteries are expensive, $10,000 to $20,000 to replace. But here's the context. Most EV batteries are warranted for 8 years or 100,000 miles by federal law, and real-world data shows most batteries last well beyond that. It's a risk, but it's a small one if you're buying a reputable brand. Add all these up. Charger install, extra insurance, and you're looking at roughly $300 to $500 a year in hidden EV costs over a 10-year period. Real, but manageable. And they don't cancel out the savings. Okay, let's put it all together. Over 10 years, for a typical American homeowner who charges mostly at home, you save roughly $10,000 to $15,000 in fuel compared to a gas car. You save another $7,000 to $8,000 in maintenance. You spend an extra $500 to $1,500 on a home charger. You spend maybe $2,000 to $3,000 more on insurance over the decade. And the upfront price gap, after the tax credit, is close to zero. Net result. Most EV owners come out $12,000 to $18,000 ahead over 10 years compared to owning an equivalent gas car. That's not a marginal difference. That's a used car's worth of money. But here's the scenario where the math flips. If you're charging primarily at public fast chargers, no home setup, the fuel savings evaporate and potentially reverse. If you're in a state with very cheap gas and very expensive electricity, the numbers tighten. And if you're buying and selling every 2 to 3 years, the upfront costs and depreciation hit harder. So the honest answer to, do EVs save you money, is yes, for most people who own a home and keep their car. No, or maybe for everyone else. And that second group is bigger than the EV community likes to admit. Before we wrap, I want to knock out 3 things that keep coming up in EV comment sections that are either flat out wrong or way overstated. Myth 1. EVs catch fire all the time. You've seen those videos on social media. Here's the actual data. EVs catch fire at a rate of about 25 fires per 100,000 vehicles. Gas cars, 1,500 fires per 100,000. Gas cars catch fire 60 times more often than EVs. Per 100,000 vehicles, EVs, 25 fires. Gas cars, 1,500 fires. Your EV is actually the safer bet. Myth 2. Charging is way more expensive than gas now. Sometimes true, sometimes false, and it depends entirely on where you're charging and what your local electricity rate is. We covered this. Do your own math for your zip code. Myth 3. The grid can't handle everyone charging their EV. Studies from the Department of Energy show the current U.S. grid can support up to 70% EV adoption with smart charging, meaning charging at night when demand is low. The grid doesn't need to be rebuilt. It needs to be used smarter. After everything we have covered in this video, it comes down to one simple question. Will an electric car actually save money for your specific situation? The honest answer is that it depends on which group you fall into. And there are really only two groups that matter here. The first group is people who will almost certainly come out ahead financially. You own a home with a driveway or garage where you can install a charging outlet and plug in every night. You do most of your driving locally, commuting to work, running errands, dropping kids at school. And you plan to keep this car for at least 5 to 7 years. If those three things describe you, the math works in your favor. The fuel savings, the lower maintenance costs, and the reduced running expenses all add up significantly over time. Most people in this situation save between $12,000 and $18,000 compared to owning a gas car over a decade. The second group is people where the math does not work as cleanly, at least not right now. You live in an apartment or a building without dedicated parking or charging access. You depend on public charging stations for most of your miles. Or you tend to trade in your car every 2 to 3 years before the savings have time to accumulate. If that sounds like you, an electric car might not save you money in the near term, and that is an honest and completely reasonable conclusion to reach. Not every vehicle is the right fit for every lifestyle, and that is okay to admit. The problem with most electric car content is that it picks one of these groups and pretends the other one does not exist. Either everyone is going to save thousands by switching, or electric cars are a complete financial mistake. The truth is that both groups are large, both are real, and the answer to whether an electric car saves you money depends almost entirely on which one you're in. So the question is not which car is better. The question is which situation are you in. So, do electric cars actually save you money? For most American homeowners, people who keep their car for 5 or more years and charge at home, the answer is yes, significantly. We're talking $12,000 to $18,000 over a decade. That is real money. But for apartment dwellers, people who rely on public chargers, or short-term owners, it gets more complicated. And the honest answer might be not yet, though probably soon, as public charging gets cheaper and the infrastructure keeps improving. Here's the thing. Nobody on the internet gets rewarded for a nuanced answer. So what you get instead is one of two takes. Either EVs will save your life and the entire planet, or EVs are a scam pushed by out-of-touch elites. And honestly, both of those are just lazy. The math is actually pretty straightforward if you sit down and run the numbers for your specific situation, which is exactly what we just did together. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your situation in the comments. Do you own or rent? How many miles do you drive each week? Have you already made the switch? I read every single comment, and I'll reply to as many as I can. And if you found this more useful than the usual EV content out there, please subscribe. We do this every week. No agenda, just the actual numbers.